Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. Though many dangers, toils, and snares I have already come, 'tis grace has brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. The Lord has promised good to me, His word my hope secures. He will my shield and portion be, as long as life endures. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we'd first begun. We've no less days to sing God's praise than when we'd first begun.
Could everyone please come in and take their seats? And those who are out in the hallway there, if you would encourage others to come in now. Thank you.
All right, we got to get people in the door here. So let's sing this thing. Everyone, let's stand up. Up, 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 up. Here we go. The trumpets sound, the angels sing, the feast is ready to begin. The gates of heaven are open wide, and Jesus welcomes you inside. Sing with thankfulness songs of pure delight. Come and revel in heaven's love and light. Take your place at the table of the King. The feast is ready to begin. The feast is ready to begin. Tables are laden with good things. Oh, taste the peace and joy he brings. He'll fill you up with love divine. He'll turn your water into wine. Sing with thankfulness songs of pure delight. Come and revel in heaven's love and light. Take your place at the table of the King. The feast is ready to begin. The feast is ready to begin. The hungry heart he satisfies, offers the poorest paradise. Now hear all heaven and earth applaud the amazing goodness of the Lord. Sing with thankfulness songs of pure delight. Come and revel in heaven's love and light. Take your place at the table of the King. The feast is ready to begin. The feast is ready to begin.
Please take your seats as quickly as possible. That would be good. While you're assembling, everyone, just a quick announcement. We all signed cards this morning with respect to a message to the premiers who are meeting in Niagara-on-the-Lake in a couple of weeks on the issue. Our letter addresses the issue of poverty and homelessness. It's been suggested to me that you might each want to take a blank copy of that card and take it back to your parishes and perhaps reproduce copies of it so that we can multiply our efforts and strengthen our voice in terms of a message to the premiers. So those cards are on the table over there at the door where Sister Margaret is there. Okay? I believe so. Now, it's very wonderful when people who are watching the Synod at work are prepared to help the Synod create the space and time it needs to do and finish certain pieces of work. So we were approached at the head table before supper, or just at the supper break, by the Structures Working Group. And they have offered to forego their time on the agenda this evening so that we can finish the debate on Resolution A172. And that's a very generous gesture on their part. And I want to say thank you to them for their consideration of the Synod and our need to do this work and to do it as best we can. So thank you very much to the Structures Working Group. I also want to say at the outset that it's really important for us to finish this debate. We must tonight deal with the financial report and the two resolutions connected with that. And I want us to honor as best we possibly can to be on time for the presentation by the Council of the North. So that's scheduled for 8 o'clock, and so we're going to now move into our evening schedule. The proposal, and again this comes as a result of some conversations, a number of conversations in fact, over the supper hour with folks at the head table, with Dean Peter Elliott, who was moving an amendment, and Dean Douglas Stout, who was moving an amendment to the amendment. And there is some consensus that's emerged, and I trust the House will be satisfied with this, that we will deal with the amendment that Peter Elliott had put forth with respect to amending Section 3 in the resolution. We will deal with that. Then we'll have the motion as amended, and then I'm anticipating that Douglas Stout may come forward with another amendment because his amendment really spoke to Section 2. So we'll deal in that order: amendments in Section 3, the motion as amended, and then if another amendment to Section 2 comes forward, we'll deal with it, and then the motion as finally amended. Okay? The other thing that I want to say is that, again, out of sensitivity, I think, to a number of folks and how they're feeling in the midst of this debate, the thought here is that we will, when we come to vote on the amendments and the resolution itself, that we think that in the interests of people being able to maintain some anonymity, we'll vote by clicker, and we'll have the results up fairly quickly. Does that sound like a helpful way forward? Okay. Before we begin to move into the debate again, let's just take a few moments of quietness and ask for God's guidance. O God, as we have seen and heard the rains pouring down from heaven, as we continue to hear that rain pouring down from heaven, so pour down upon us your Holy Spirit, to drench us with your wisdom, to fill us with your grace, to enlighten our minds, and to guide our way this night. Help us to remember those whose lives are at the center of this conversation. Their yearnings for peace, and justice. Guide and direct our thinking. Guide and direct our speaking. Guide and direct our listening. That we may make decisions that are in keeping with your will. We pray in the name of him who said, "Whenever 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am in their midst." Amen. So we had a lineup of speakers who were going to be speaking to the original motion, but let's make sure that those who want to speak to amendment, the amendment with respect to Section 3 are first at the microphones. So this was the amendment, and Peter, where are you, Peter Elliott? Thank you. Peter, could you just refresh us with the wording of your amendment? Thank you.
I believe it's on the screen. It's changing Section 3 only.
And the effect of your change is that Roman numerals 1, 2, and 3 in the original text are removed?
That's correct.
And only Roman numeral 4 is left?
That's correct.
Okay. So it reads, well, you can all see it, commit to act together with the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Canada and other ecumenical partners, and then it picks up Roman numeral 4, and to strengthen relationships with Canadian Jews and Muslims, to resolutely oppose anti-Semitism, anti-Arab sentiments, and Islamophobia. So that's the amendment that's before us now. Anyone wishing to speak to the amendment? Who was your seconder, Peter? Archdeacon John, thank you. Did you get that, Josie? Anyone wishing to speak to the amendment? Yes, thank you. Microphone number 2.
Your Grace, my name is Hugh Mackenzie, Diocese of Algoma. I speak in favor of this amendment. Indeed, I would be unable to vote in favor of the main motion as it stands. While I appreciate the sentiment with which the motion was moved, I believe the motion as it now stands is somewhat, if not in a major way, condemning of Israel. And I'm not sure that we're in a position to judge the tremendous situation in the Middle East. And I would ask people to think about the fact that if they were surrounded physically by people who wanted to destroy them, whether they might not be tempted to take certain precautions and certain steps that under normal circumstances they should not take. And I think that for us to do something that even has the appearance of taking sides in this, not only historically, but in terms of our Christian tradition, is a mistake. There are times that we have to stand and take hard stands. I believe the hard stand that is reflected in this motion as it stands now in relation to the state of Israel is not in the best interest of them, and is not in the best interest of our Christian friends, and is not in the best interest of this synod. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone 1, are you wishing to speak to this amendment? Thank you, Dennis.
Your Grace, members of Synod, Dennis Drainville, Quebec. I'm reminded of the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, and if I might paraphrase him, injustice to people anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. You know, as I listened to both the discussions regarding the motion and regarding the amendment, they were both based upon three words that were used. The three words are, the issue is too complex. The issue is political. It shows bias. And to each of those, my brothers and sisters, I say yes, yes, and yes again. To say that it is so complex that we cannot endeavor to get our minds around the issues and to educate ourselves and to try to understand the needs and aspirations of the people of the Middle East is ridiculous. And it almost implies that we have no capacity to be able to understand these very difficult issues. To say that they're complex and we should not touch this issue is really a sweeping away of the issue so that we don't have to say anything. And there are lots of people that are not willing to say anything. As to the issue around political, I cannot believe that this same argument is being trotted out year after year after year. The church shouldn't be political. Just recently, out in the hall, I heard someone say, well, you know, it's the division between church and state has to be operative. I'm afraid this is not the United States of America, and that division does not hold here in Canada. Politics is part of the reality of life. We have, in fact, an absolute not only right, but we have a responsibility to be engaged in looking at issues and making decisions about what we believe around those issues. And in fact, if we don't do that, we abrogate our understanding of the gospel. We actually say that the gospel is not going to be the formative direction of our life. And as to the last one, bias. You know, yes, I'm biased. And I would say to you that if you're not biased, what's wrong with you? I'm biased for the gospel of Jesus Christ. I'm biased for justice. I'm biased for peace. I'm biased that people should have rights in this world when they're not receiving those rights. You and I have a moral obligation to stand up for what we believe. If anyone tells us that because of politics and the issue is complex and that we have a bias and somehow the implication is that this is bad, it's wrong, we shouldn't be involved, I say to you, enough. Let us stand for something in the Anglican Church of Canada, and if not justice, then what?
Excuse me, we don't applause during debate. Further speakers to the amendment. Michael, microphone number 1.
Your Grace, Michael Ingham, New Westminster. Not everyone in New Westminster supports this amendment, and I would be one who is opposed to it for many reasons. First of all, it guts the resolution. It eviscerates the statement. It leaves us with nothing more than we said in 2010. Secondly, it removes the call to educate ourselves about injustice and suffering experienced by both Palestinians and Israelis. Why we would not want to educate ourselves about that, I cannot imagine. Thirdly, it removes the reference to Christian Zionism. Last November at the ACC meeting in New Zealand, the Anglican Consultative Council meeting, they took note of a report that had been prepared for them about Christian Zionism. They asked for further work to be done and for it to come back for further study and reflection. Christian Zionism is an ideology that teaches we should support the state of Israel whatever happens, because in the return of the Jews to Israel, Armageddon will be furthered and the judgment of Jesus will come down upon the earth. I have served on the Anglican Consultative Council. It is not a radical body. If they are prepared to study Christian Zionism, I cannot imagine why we would not be. Next, the steps the amendment would remove are precisely those that have been recommended to us by church leaders in the Middle East. We would, if this amendment passes, effectively be saying to church leaders in the Middle East, we don't think you understand the complexity of the situation. There was a reference made at this microphone earlier today about colonialism. Nothing could be more colonial than that. A reference has been made to the United Church of Canada. I want to tell you that the United Church of Canada's resolution went much further than this is calling for. The United Church discussed the boycott of goods produced in the occupied territories that improperly carry Israeli labels on them. This resolution calls for nothing approaching that. It calls us to learn more about these products. It's not going half as far as our colleagues in the United Church did. Next, reference was made earlier to a rabbi who would be upset if this resolution passes. Well, let me tell you, I can introduce you to several rabbis who would be upset if this amendment passes. Some years ago, I met with a group in Israel called the Rabbinic Human Rights Watch. This is a group of brave Jews who have protested the illegal blowing up of Palestinian homes by the Israeli Defense Force. And they do this not because they're pro-Palestinian, but because they wish to preserve the moral conscience of Judaism. In respect for the moral conscience of Judaism, they oppose illegal and unethical actions by their own government. Nothing could call for more guts than that. Lastly, we can't wash our hands of this complexity. We're involved in it. If the resolution shows bias, then the amendment shows the opposite bias. We can't be free of bias. We hold in our hands a Bible. In the Bible, there are words of ancient prophets condemning the injustices of their own nation. Perhaps if this amendment passes, we would be saying to them, you might not quite have got it right.
Thank you. Further speakers to the amendment? Yes, microphone number 1 or 2.
Brittany Cartwright, Diocese of Huron. I'm not sure whether this is appropriate to speak to the amendment or whether it would be a separate amendment, because I have a problem with part of the amendment but not the whole thing. I do not think that Romans numerals 1 and 2 should be removed because they are about education, and but I do believe that Roman numeral 3 of section 3 should be removed because of the wording of it. I do agree that exploring Christian Zionism could be done, but to challenge the beliefs before we have explored them is wrong. So I don't know whether that would be another amendment or this. So
I think that is. If you want to change, you're suggesting proposed change in section 3, aren't you? Roman numeral 3.
Yeah.
To delete, are you suggesting that the word, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm just trying to help you here. I hear you saying before we challenge, we need to explore.
I think I'm suggesting that we defeat the current amendment.
Yes.
But change the wording of Roman numeral 3 as a new.
Okay, so you're satisfied for us to finish the debate around the amendment itself, and then if you want to make further amendment, you will bring something forward?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak to the amendment? Oh, yes, microphone number 1.
Your Grace, I just wanted to say that I do agree with what's being proposed, especially to remain in communion with Jerusalem. I think it's a very good thing. It's a very positive thing. I don't have the fancy words that a lot of the speakers have, but I do ask the Creator to help me, to put words into my mouth and to help me with my thoughts before I speak. And I just wanted to say that wouldn't it be an awesome event if this synod was able to change, like the theme says, gather for the love of the world. If this synod would change direction about the donations and partner with each Native community where there are First Nations in Anglican churches, and learn and get to know them and get to share on both sides. Because I think we have enough injustices with the colonialism and the history of residential schools. I'm not blaming anybody for the history of the residential schools. I didn't have anything to do with it, neither did you, but our ancestors, you know, the history of the church. So I think it's a very positive thing, reaching out across the ocean, but I think it's really, really awesome if this can be done at this synod. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other people wish. Yes, okay, sorry. Microphone number 2, speaking to the amendment.
Megan Lofgren, Diocese of Saskatoon. I'm concerned about a couple of things, and that I appreciate the idea of deleting certain sections, I appreciate the idea of this amendment, sorry, for 2 reasons. One is I don't feel that this motion, as it stands without the amendment, makes it clear that as a body, as a Christian body, that we are making a judgment call on a behavior, not on a people. And I think that as a people of God, we need to make that clear. It is not our job to make a judgment call on a nation. And but it is our responsibility, as another speaker did say, that it is our responsibility to stand up for what is right and what is just. And we just need to be clear in the way that we're doing that and exactly what we're saying. And the other thing is that Roman numeral 1, enable deeper church-wide awareness of and response to the call of Kairos Palestine, a moment of truth. That document, I would caution that there are some things in that document that that might suggest something we might not want to say, in that when you ask a nation to do something that you are not asking other nations to do, there's an implication of that. There's a subtle form of, when you ask a nation like Israel to do things that you're not asking other Arab nations to do, such as calling them to be a secular nation, it's a little far one way. And so I guess those are my concerns, and I hope that anyone else can identify with that.
Thank you very much. I think we're ready to oh, I'm sorry, microphone number 2.
Carolyn Pugh from the Diocese of Niagara. I just want to kind of make a note here. If you consider this amendment that takes out 3 sections of 3, then consider what the motion is when you're left and what it's saying. And so section 3 would say, commit to act together with the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Canada and other ecumenical partners to strengthen relations relationships with Canadian Jews and Muslims, to resolutely oppose anti-Semitism, anti-Arab sentiments, and Islamophobia. And that's good. We should do that, yes. But I don't see a point to the motion. If you get rid of that, then I feel like the motion itself is, as it stands, doesn't really say anything more to me.
Thank you. Let's take a moment of quiet before we vote. Okay, if you could take your clickers in hand, please. And you may begin vote. Has everyone had opportunity to vote? Those of you who are standing at microphones, have you had opportunity to vote? Thank you. We'll declare the voting closed. And we'll await the results which will appear on the screen. Thank you very much. The results are before us. Those in favor, 35%, and those opposed, 65%. So the motion is defeated. Or the amendment, I'm sorry. The amendment is defeated. So the motion is before us, A172. Microphone number 1.
Your Grace, members of Synod, Lynn McNaughton, Diocese of New Westminster. I rise simply to support this motion wholeheartedly. I think it calls us to witness for justice, to study. All of the language we were just talking about in the amendment pushes us into action, and if the call to Kairos Palestine is a document that will get further discussion in the church, that we will have to challenge ourselves to study it and look at the implications, I think that's good. That's where we need to be. Our brothers and sisters have asked us to study this, to act. We are partners with them. We are called to be in solidarity with them. So I wholeheartedly support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Microphone number 2.
Your Grace, members of Synod, Kyle Wagner from the Diocese of Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island. I don't have fancy words, but I am a biased Christian, and I do feel that I support this resolution wholeheartedly in the sense that I've heard talks about respect and listening to the voice of a nation. In 1949, the Fourth Geneva Convention was signed because of what happened, in part because of the Second World War. And being privileged to have spent time in South Africa, I heard the voices of clergy in that nation saying, we thought you never heard our voice. And I fear that if we don't have dialogue and education and discussion, even with our United Church brothers and sisters, that we're going to miss out and the people are going to be left behind. And I think politics and faith to a point certainly can mix. And I urge members of this synod to please reflect on what we are saying and listen to the voices of all the people in Israel, not just those who have elected the current government.
Thank you. Microphone number 1.
Ian Sinclair, Diocese of Montreal. I too had read the book I Will Not Hate by that Palestinian doctor, and I read about his 3 daughters, I thought it was 3, which are killed in their apartment.
Could you come just a little closer
Sorry.
to the microphone? Thank you.
Sorry. It was poignant to hear what happened to those people. And I had to ask myself, what caused this to happen in that land? I thought about suicide bombs blowing up buses in Israel. I thought about Scud missiles raining down on small towns in Israel too. There's a certain symmetry to this conflict which I didn't think was reflected in the resolution as it's written. There's elements of the right of Israel to exist, which is opposed by Hamas. There's elements, problematical elements of right to return of millions of Palestinians, delicate issues. I wanted to balance it. We talked about the occupied territories. I wanted to make an amendment to insert before 3:4, an amendment to read, this is after the section that says to explore and challenge theologies and beliefs such as Christian Zionism, to explore and challenge theories and beliefs that deny the right of Israel to exist. I wanted to insert that to balance it, because if you just take one side, you're not going to influence Israel. You've got to, you could back Israel to a corner and they won't respond. You've got to be diplomatic in making these kind of declarations. So normally in diplomacy you hear this, come back from the occupied lands, don't shower the missiles. There has to be equality for this to be effective. So I propose that amendment. I'll read it again. To explore and challenge theories and beliefs that deny the right of Israel to exist.
That's an amendment to the 3rd section.
Correct.
And is that that would go in between the current Roman numeral 3 and the current Roman numeral 4?
Correct. So they would be renumbered accordingly.
Do you have a seconder?
Jason Antonio
Jason
was sitting
Antonio?
next to me there.
Thank you. You're taking that as a friendly amendment? Thank you very much. And the
Very good.
seconder? Thank you very much. Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you. So do we have the word, Josie, do you have the wording?
To explore and challenge theories and beliefs that deny the state of Israel to exist.
Right.
I'm sorry?
The right of Israel to exist.
The right of Israel to exist.
Sorry, microphone, is there a question over here about this? No? Okay, we're clear. Microphone number 1.
I do, Lynn McNaughton, Diocese of New Westminster, I do have a point of clarification. Is it getting rid of the current number 3 and 4
No,
or adding?
this is an addition.
It's an addition, and
Yeah.
so it leaves it as it is but adds that.
Okay?
That's fine.
So section 3 will have five Roman numeral sections now, okay? So that's that, and that amendment is considered friendly by the original mover and seconder to the motion, correct? All right, we're all on the same page still. We're speaking then to the resolution. Microphone number 1.
Father Shane Bengry, Diocese of Brandon. I'm speaking against the motion. I find it strange that when we were discussing the motion regarding the Anglican covenant, it was decided that we shouldn't really do anything now because there wasn't a broad consensus. Can this body here honestly say that there is a broad consensus regarding this issue? And so why are we so eager to put forth one political point of view? Often I think in this Anglican Church of Canada, what political affiliations do we have to be a part of the Anglican Church of Canada? And motions like this make it very clear to me that it has to be on the left wing, and in fact the far left wing. I reject the idea that you have to be of these certain political ideologies to have anything to say about the poor or the marginalized or those who suffer. These are solutions only in one direction, and I reject them.
Thank you. Microphone number 2.
Tony Tier from the Diocese of Calgary. I have a question with respect to the motion and its reference to the Evangelical Lutheran Church. Have they, in fact, passed this resolution in their synod? That we are joining them, and that's what I understand, but it isn't clear to a number of the people here in the synod.
If I can I respond to that? I think that the reference to acting together with the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Canada is really a reference to the fact that we are in a full communion relationship with that church, and they have in fact in the past adopted a number of resolutions very much along the nature of the kind of resolutions our General Synod has adopted through the years.
Thank you.
Microphone number, Cynthia, yes, microphone number 1, Cynthia.
Cynthia Haynes-Turner, Diocese of Western Newfoundland. I deferred speaking to the motion, so this is not to close the debate or anything, right? Okay.
Right.
Okay.
The mover will do that.
I speak in favor of the motion. Is it complicated? Absolutely. And so when we come to an issue that's extremely complicated and that we are having difficulty with, what should we do? I think we should, at that point, consult with those who are affected by the actions that we are suggesting. In this case, these people are our partners. What does it mean to be in partnership? It means to consult with and to act in accordance with the wishes of our partners. And my understanding is that the motion comes from in conjunction with what we are hearing from our partners who are affected by this motion. It commits us to study, to explore, to educate ourselves, and I think that is part of what we are called to do if we are called to be in partnership.
Thank you. Microphone number 2.
Your Grace, members of Synod, my name is Gwen Andrews from the Diocese of Caledonia. I wish to speak against this resolution. Parts 1 and the first 2 Roman numerals of Part 2 I agree with, that we do affirm our existing commitments to solidarity with Anglicans in the province of Jerusalem and the Middle East in their work for justice and peace. To reiterate to Canadian Anglicans and to our federal government the established policy of the Anglican Church of Canada, which recognizes the legitimate aspirations, rights, and needs of both Israelis and Palestinians to live in peace, with dignity, within sovereign and secure borders, condemns the use of violence of all kinds, especially against civilians. Beyond that, I don't feel that we, as a Christian community, can determine how that can best be accomplished. The history of the Middle East and Israel and Palestine has been a very troubled history. All these people, the majority of these people, are displaced persons who are all immigrants to this region over a period of 75 years or so. So we are talking about a multitude of displaced persons. We're talking about foreign powers that have had control of these areas. This area was under the control of Turkey for many years. After the Second World War, after the First World War, it came under the authority of Britain and France, who, again, divvied it up according to their political aspirations. We have come to this point not on a straightforward journey. As a result of foreign powers' governance of that region, the Holocaust happened, where 6 million Jews were exterminated. They had no place to go. They were forbidden from entering into Israel or Palestine. There was no Israel. They were forbidden to enter Palestine. Can we now make decisions that affect their future? Where were we when we should have been making decisions? Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone number 1.
I hope, Archbishop, to be helpful here. I'm listening with great interest to the arguments being made on one side and the other of this motion. But it appears to me as I reread this motion that paragraph 1 and paragraph 2 refer to the existing policy of the Anglican Church of Canada. The only thing that is novel in this motion is section 3. So maybe that will be helpful to some people.
Thank you. Microphone number 2.
Your Grace, John Chapman, Diocese of Ottawa. I've heard it said to me on 2 or 3 different occasions and from 2 or 3 different sources that the first time one goes to the Holy Land, one wants to come home and write a book. And the second time one goes to the Holy Land, one wants to write a small paper. And the third time you go to the Holy Land, you want to listen. And I find that this motion fits well within the bounds of listening. I see it as an educational piece. I'm not offended at all by the church being politically active. In fact, I think there are many occasions when we ought to be politically active, but I think this motion is actually not even in that realm. I think it fits well within the bounds of education, using language like enabling, educate, explore and challenge, strengthen. I mean, this is the language of education, and so I find this motion tame, actually, in response to some of the stronger comments that have been made today. I don't think it's saying all of the things that people are responding to. I think it's a very calm motion that is calling us to listen, and I think one doesn't listen well unless one is also learning and reading and challenging and listening again, and it's calling us to education, and I think in the very best sense. And so for those reasons, I find this motion more than acceptable, and I would be proud to vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone number 1.
Stephen Warner, Diocese of Toronto. I was going to address some of these issues when we get to the same-sex blessing resolution, but I feel like some people need to be reminded of it now. I'm going to quote the motto of this conference: together to love the world. That doesn't mean like the people in the church. That means love everyone. You don't have to like someone to love them. You simply have to give them respect and dignity. Who is them? Everyone, the entire world, not just members of this church, of this synod, of the Anglican Church, or of the World Federation of Churches, or anyone. It means everyone, not bound by one specific group. For that reason, I'd like to point out a couple of comments made by previous speakers around bias and politics. Because, as we have affirmed, the motto of this conference to be together for the love of the world, that means to not be biased, to support equally everyone, not just some people, everyone. In regards to politics and the idea of a lack of separation between church and state, I might be a little bit young to comment on this, but that's far from the case. From what I've been told from people much more older and more experienced and wiser than I am, 50 years ago, this church and the state were much more connected. We would say the Lord's Prayer in schools. We would have much more references to religion and God in our education system. That's not true nowadays. Having just graduated from the public education system, I can say with great certainty that there is absolutely no joining of church and state in our education system. For that reason, in regards to the actual motion, I would say that we should, as a synod, not support this motion. For the simple reason that because of a lack of joining of church and state, the General Synod should not be taking sides in politics. The aim of the church and the aim of the General Synod is to love and support everyone, not some people, and not to take sides in an argument. And for that reason, I would say that we should not be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone number 2. And I see one more speaker at microphone number 2, and then I think we'll close the debate.
Your Grace and members of Synod, sorry to continue this further on, but I'm bringing that amendment forward. I move that the words "and challenge" in section 3, Roman numeral 3, be removed, so it would read, "explore the theologies and beliefs of Christian Zionism." I don't believe it's right to challenge the beliefs of others, even if they are different from ours. And I especially don't believe it's right to challenge when currently we know nothing about them. That's seconded by Ian Silk.
By whom?
Ian Silk.
Ian Silk. Thank you. So that amendment to delete the words in section 3, Roman numeral 3, and challenge. Excuse me. Can you tell me your name again? I'm sorry.
Brittany Cartwright, Diocese of Huron.
Do you intend that for if you can see it on the screen there, sections 3 and 4? Roman numeral 3 and 4?
No, just for Roman
just
numeral 3.
Thank you.
And it would have to be replaced with a "the" to make it grammatically correct.
So that's the amendment that's in front of us right now then, to delete those 2 words in 3 section Roman numeral 3. Okay, I'm hearing call for question on this amendment to delete those 2 words, and challenge. Okay. Can we try this one by a show of hands? Would you be comfortable to proceed that way? Okay. All right, I'm hearing no's. Put your clicker in hand, please. Thank you. And now, if you'd please vote. We had enough time? We declare voting closed, and we'll await the result. The amendment is defeated. Thank you. So we're back to the motion as it is. Microphone number 1.
Excuse me. I find this difficult. I spent 2 years over there with the UN. I buried my friends. 22 Canadians are buried there. We protected Israelis, Egyptians, the Palestinians, and the Bedouins. We provided fresh water for them. We provided medical assistance when they needed them. And after 60 years, the Synod is finally going to do something. Just unbelievable. These people have been in conflicts for that long, plus longer. Someone said about politics, well, pardon me, I don't give a damn about politics. It's about people that matter in this world. And some of the things I've heard this tonight, unbelievable. Do people not read? Do not people follow the news? International news, world news. It's all there. I would like to see this motion passed. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone number 2.
Iolamituk from Arctic. I really want to help brothers and sisters in the world. For tonight, what I hear, we're not going to give any solution for them. But it keep on coming to me, the passage, David and Goliath. They were scared, that big, powerful man, Palestine. They cannot find who's suitable to fight him. There was a humbly young man, David. He wasn't scared. And he said, I'll go to him. I'll fight for him. No one going to fight with the slingshot. But he go there for the name of the Lord. This issue, it's God's work. We need to trust each other. When we trust the Lord, we're going to reach what we want through the Lord. So I'm eager to help, but I don't know anything about the Jerusalem, but I know from the Bible. So let's consider something that our eagerness to help to our brothers and sisters in Christ. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I see one more speaker at microphone number 1, and then I think we'll move to call question.
Your Grace, General Synod, Emily Harnish from the Diocese of Saskatchewan. My question for Your Grace is, what are the Palestinian people and their opinion on this resolution? Sorry, this resolution. My understanding is that they are divided in it. And if the people that, from my understanding of this motion, if the people that we are here to represent and to take action for, if they are divided themselves, then why is this before Synod? Or are they divided? Can you clarify that for me, Your Grace?
Can you repeat the last part of that, please?
Are the people in Palestine who we seem to be representing with this motion, are they divided in this resolution or this motion?
Are they themselves divided?
Yes, Your Grace.
Yes. My understanding is that the Kairos document is written by church leaders, and the title of the document is "We Hear the Cry of Our Children." And so they are speaking on behalf of all those for whom they have care and concern. And the Kairos document has appealed. It's really, in many ways, an appeal to a number of groups of people. First of all, there is, let me just find the correct reference here. There is a word to our brothers and sisters, which is, in fact, a word to Christians all throughout the world. There is a section entitled specifically Our Word to the Churches of the World, thanking us for solidarity, but also calling us to repentance and revisiting fundamentalist theological positions, and condemning all forms of racism, which is enshrined, I think, in the resolution. In order to understand our reality, we say to the churches, come and see. So there's an appeal to the churches to come and see the situation. There is a section on our word to the international community. So that's a word really to world leaders, both government and religious. And then there's a section, a call to our own Palestinian people and to the Israelis. So it's a document in which they really are speaking as representatively as they can for all the Palestinians, and an appeal for Palestinians and Israelis to work together.
I understand that, Your Grace. With all due respect, though, I still don't understand if the Palestinian people, who, from my understanding, and do correct me if I am wrong, is my understanding that the Palestinian people are who we are representing with this motion, seeing as they are the Christians within this territory. Are they the ones are they divided within themselves on what we as Canadians in the Anglican Church are doing for them with this motion?
I don't believe they are. I think they are calling. They're calling for support.
And Your Grace, not trying to get into a debate with you, but with all due respect, I agree with helping Palestinians. I was in Halifax when they came and visited. I've met and we housed Estelvina, one of a Palestinian. And so I understand the problems that are going on in the Middle East, and I completely agree with standing with them. I know that that is what she would have liked. However, if they themselves, if we cannot say with pure strength and conscience that they are together in this, then how can we, who are, across the sea from them and really have only connections with them by having met with them or having visited with them, or even, as the gentleman before me said, worked for them, how can we stand before Synod and before God Almighty saying that, this is a motion we should put forward if they themselves are not together in it?
Your Grace, on a point of order.
Yes.
I believe the discussion has moved to the merits of the question, and I think it's both improper to put that kind of question to the chair, because the chair is then in an impossible position of arguing merits or refusing to do so. So I would raise a point of order. I understand the sincerity of your questions and everything else. They would be quite appropriate for the debate at the microphone. But I think we have to be fair to the primate in this and not putting him in a position in which he would be seen in any way to be favoring one side or the other of this argument. That would be my point of order, sir. Thank you.
My apologies, Your Grace. I did not mean to center it entirely around you. And thank you for listening.
Thank you. I appreciate your concern. Now, yes, question has been called, and I think I do need to honor it at this point. Several speakers have appeared at microphones after we said that was the conclusion. Unless, let me check with the House. I don't want to offend. Are you prepared to hear one more speaker at microphone number 1 and then to have Richard close the debate? I think questions being called. Thank you. Thank you. If you could get your clickers ready, please. And let's just again take a moment of quiet before we vote. Please vote. Ten more seconds. You would declare voting closed. And we'll await the results. They'll appear on the screen for us. The resolution is carried 73%, opposed 27%. So the resolution is carried. Yes, microphone number 1.
Terry Lear, Diocese of Athabasca. There's a footnote at the back of the pink sheets that says in an ordinary motion it's got to be done by House of Bishops and then House of Clergy and Laity. Does that really hold true?
Sorry, Terry?
On those pink sheets in our binders,
yes,
there's a footnote at the bottom that says an ordinary motion has to be carried House of Bishops and then Clergy and Laity.
No, we changed that rule of order earlier in the Synod.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we vote as one house. Thank you. Microphone 2.
Your Grace, it's Don Wilson from British Columbia. I recognize that it seems that the vote has passed and in favor, but I still would like to have heard Dr. Lazure's closing remarks, if we could.
I think the resolution has been adopted, and I think in the interest of time, we really do need to move on, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm not going to give you a break because we are pressured for time, and I'm going to ask that we move quickly now to the financial report. And this would be our treasurer, Hannah Goshi, Rob Dixon, the chair of finance, and I believe Colin Johnson will be moving the resolutions. Only leave the room if you absolutely have to go. I know you are.
Notice the age breakdown of those leaving.
Thank you. And if you'll direct your attention to the podium, they're making their way. And just so you're ready for the resolutions, there's a report first, but the resolutions are going to be 150 and 151.
Your Grace, members of Synod, my name is Rob Dixon from Diocese of New Westminster, and I'm the chair of the Financial Management Committee. It's my pleasure to report on behalf of the Financial Management Committee. Our committee was comprised of dedicated, thoughtful Anglicans who brought skill and sound judgment to the work of the committee. We were blessed to be supported and guided by two excellent treasurers. We started the triennium with Michelle George and finished the triennium under the guidance of Hannah Goshi. The committee would not be able to start its work without the detailed work and ongoing advice of our treasurer. Hannah Goshi stepped in to the position and was immediately going at full speed. We say thank you. And General Synod needs to know its financial affairs are being guided and managed by a very good treasurer, and I'm sure I would have support from that by the General Secretary and the Primate. Current financial challenges that we are facing as a national church were foreseen a number of years ago. Deficits, sometimes of a significant magnitude, were persistent during the past decade. Proportional giving from dioceses, the key source of financial support for the national church, has been declining steadily over the past 20 years. Softening of diocesan proportional gifts over a long time horizon is a huge vulnerability for the national church. Unrestricted bequests have been a blessing for many years over the past 2 decades, and we owe tremendous thanks to the proportional giving department of the national church that has been so diligent in this. Receipt of unrestricted bequests has been a regular and significant factor in mitigating relief of annual deficits. In fact, there were a few recent years in which the bequests were quite sizable. So there's been a pattern of funding deficits from dwindling unrestricted surpluses from prior years and undesignated requests from generous Anglicans. As a consequence, some directives were set in the last few years. The Financial Management Development Committee in October 2008 recommended to COGS, and they accepted the recommendation, to limit the use of undesignated requests to fund core operations. And that was done on a declining scale, down to the current limit of only 10% of a bequest being taken into the current budget. Part of the reason for that was we were left at the end of the residential school settlement ongoing situation with our reserves being completely depleted. That was not a good situation. It's not a good situation for any organization. The restricted portion of the undesignated requests were transferred and have been transferred annually for the last couple of years to the internally designated assets for the Ministry Investment Fund. The next serious, significant decision of Council of General Synod was in November of 2008. It directed General Synod to eliminate deficit budgeting by 2012. General Synod in 2010 with a resolution which was reconfirmed in this year by a similar resolution, established a decision-making process to prioritize General Synod resolutions that require financial resources not included or not thought of in the current budget. Restructuring was completed in 2010, early in the current triennium, and a balanced budget was achieved in 2011, 1 year ahead of schedule. But given the historical line of decreasing DOS and proportional giving and inflationary pressure on expenses, it was recognized that balanced budgets would be sustainable only in the very short term. Sustainability in the longer term would be dependent on stabilized and hopefully better yet improved revenue, but that trend hasn't happened yet. Stable DOS and proportional giving, and creating an affordable structure. Emerging financial realities 1 year ago indicated the deficits were looming, and these were caused by the fact that deliberate and significant investment in resources for mission initiatives over the past 2 years, although significant work has been done, have not borne the fruit as quickly as the budgeting process hoped it would. Very hard work in the area of major and strategic gifts. Again, significant work has gone on, but that is long-term work and has not paid off in as quickly as the budget folk hoped it might. Budget 2013 was recommended by the officers to COGS, and COGS approved it as a deficit budget. Notwithstanding COGS' commitment to a sustained and balanced budget, and given the extenuating circumstances, COGS approved the one-time unrestricted net assets of the Missionary Society of the Anglican Church of Canada be made available to cover the deficit anticipated in Budget 2013, as bridging toward sustainable and balanced budgeting for 2014 and onward. Budget 2013 did not reflect any structural changes. This was to allow for a thoughtful and inclusive consultative process on structures, beginning with COGS in November 2012, through to the consultation in January, through then to this session of General Synod, and further on in the coming months. Having provided the context, we are now halfway through 2013. Though still early in the year in the terms of revenue streams, actual financial results are tracking the budget toward the predicted budget deficit of approximately $500,000 for the year 2013. The Church needs to stay true to its plan of 2012 that 2013 is a transition back to balanced budgets in 2014 and onward. That could be a hill to climb, but it's one that needs to be addressed. My final thought is that we need to change our approach to our church in General Synod and in our diocese. We are in a very different time and space. Our resources have changed and will continue to change. But we are not a poor organization. We have a budget that is over $12 million this year. That is not insignificant. We need to creatively reimagine the best way to deploy that resource, and we need to do that now. We don't have time to think about it for many years. We need to support the work of the mission that Dr. Christopher Durasang reminded us of so well this week. We still have thousands of committed volunteers in our church across Canada, and we have growing numbers of committed and very enthusiastic young Christians, both lay and ordained. Let's go forward. Let's not keep looking back to the past. We do have a bright future if we look at it. With that, I will now introduce our Treasurer, Hannah Goshi, to go over the specifics of the current statements of the year 2012. Hannah?
Thank you. Good evening, dear members of General Synod. The financial, thanks. The financial documents were distributed in the convening circular. The FMC report is report number 10, and there were 3 sets of audited financial statements appended at the end of that report. Those were the statements for the Anglican Church of Canada Resolution Corporation, the Anglican Church of Canada Consolidated Trust Fund, and the General Synod of the Anglican Church of Canada. I'd like to take a minute to describe the process that we went through to prepare the statements. The financial statements were prepared by management in accordance with Canadian accounting standards. Audit committee met with our auditors, Ernst & Young, to receive the audit results report and review the draft financial statements. Audit committee is a subcommittee of Financial Management Committee, and it is chaired by Archbishop Colin Johnson. These statements present fairly the financial position of each entity in all material respects and were prepared on a basis consistent with the preceding year. Our auditors provided us with an unqualified audit opinion on each set of statements. The draft statements were subsequently reviewed by Financial Management Committee and then by the officers of General Synod, and that is how they come to you to be commended for approval, for review. Can we go to the next slide? I'll start with the Anglican Church of Canada Resolution Corporation. Resolution Corporation was incorporated in year 2003 to operate and manage funds to settle the claims arising from the residential schools. The information in the notes to the statements of ACCRC is very important and describes the essentials of the settlement agreement and the subsequent amending agreement. Total assets held by ACCRC at the end of 2012 were $5.8 million and comprised of 3 funds. The Settlement Fund, which stands at $3.6 million at year end. The Anglican Fund for Healing and Reconciliation, or the Healing Fund, which stands at $2.2 million at year end. This fund was established to provide grants for healing and reconciliation. The amending agreement sets out the criteria that is to be used by the Anglican Fund for Healing and Reconciliation Committee to determine whether projects are eligible for grants. The AFHR Committee meets twice annually to consider grant applications. Annual transfers are made from the Settlement Fund to the AFHR to enable the granting. The General Fund is unrestricted and virtually nil at the end of the year. There is a statement of operations and changes in fund balances in the audited statements, and this demonstrates the changes in each of the funds over the 2 years. All assets in ACCRC are invested in money market funds, and this is required by the settlement agreement. Unfortunately, assets are earning minimal interest given the economic situation right now. All of the funds are administered by General Synod. The cost of administration amounted to $155,000 last year. That includes 1.7 staff positions, their travel, as well as the travel of the AFHR committee members, and the production of certain resource materials. Administrative costs which are incurred by General Synod are reimbursed by ACCRC per the agreement, and the reimbursement is contingent upon approval by the Government of Canada. During 2012, just under $378,000 in grants were awarded by the AFHR committee. Since inception of the corporation, in excess of $2 million of grants have been awarded. that covers ACCRC. We'll move on to the Consolidated Trust Fund now. The Consolidated Trust Fund, or CTF, was created in 1951 to hold, manage, and invest funds for General Synod, the Missionary Society, dioceses, and parishes. There are a number of northern dioceses that have significant investments in the CTF. As well, the annuity book of business of General Synod, which is about $1.8 million, is invested in the Consolidated Trust Fund. Investment oversight to CTF is provided by the Investment Subcommittee of FMC, and that subcommittee is chaired by Mr. Kennedy Marshall. Oversight includes review of the Statement of Investment Policy and Goals, and regular review and evaluation of the investment manager, who is Connor Clark and Lund, and the custodian, who is RBC Dexia. The asset mix within CTF is reflective of a balanced fund. Benchmark asset mix is 50% fixed income, with the remainder in Canadian, US, and international equities. Canadian and US equities have been managed with a socially responsible investment mandate since December of 2005. Starting in 2013, a small proportion of the total assets will be invested in alternative investments to try and get a higher yield. And this change was recommended by the Investment Subcommittee in March. And this change is included in the revised Statement of Investment Policy, which was included in the convening circular for your information. Lastly, General Synod provides administrative services to CTF at no cost. Investment performance for CTF in 2012 was 9.5% before fees, and benchmark was 6.2%. So our investment manager outperformed the benchmark by quite a bit. The Consolidated Trust Fund operates as a unitized fund, and 72% of the units issued by CTF are owned by General Synod. Net assets in CTF were $18.3 million at the end of 2012, and this reflects significant additional investments from 2 dioceses in the fourth quarter, as well as healthy realized and unrealized market gains that were enjoyed during 2012. The Consolidated Trust Fund distributes interest income and dividend income to its investors, net of investment management and custodial fees quarterly. Realized and unrealized gains are not distributed. So just under $600,000 in income was distributed to investors in 2012. Unrealized and realized market value gains were $1 million, for a total of $1.6 million in investment income. We'll move on to the statements of General Synod now, the third set of audited financial statements. These statements consolidate the operations of General Synod, the Missionary Society, and the Anglican Journal, which was unincorporated December 31st, 2011. The operations and responsibilities of General Synod are the fiduciary responsibility for the administration of the Consolidated Trust Fund, fiduciary responsibility for the self-insured gift annuity program that's managed by the Resources for Mission Department, governance of the National Church, and operation and support of national church ministries. I'll start with the balance sheet. This is the first pie chart, and it shows the components of total assets of $20.6 million at the end of the year. You can see the single largest asset is the investment in the Consolidated Trust Fund. It represents $13.3 million, or about 2/3 of total assets. Next in magnitude is the investment in the physical building, recorded at $3 million, or 14% of total assets. Next is cash and cash equivalents of $2.5 million, or 12%. Other assets make up 9%, and that includes prepaids and miscellaneous receivables. The next pie chart shows net assets and liabilities and its component parts. Almost 1/2 of net assets and liabilities, or $9.9 million, is made up of funds that have been internally designated for various particular purposes. Accounts payable, deferred contributions, and annuity liabilities make up 26%. Endowments, which are donor-restricted contributions, make up a further 19%. 7% is composed of unrestricted net assets. The details of the $9.9 million in internally designated net assets are shown in Note 9 of the audited statements. The largest balance within the $9.9 million is the Ministry Investment Fund, which stands at $3.7 million. The Ministry Investment Fund was created in late 2008 as a result of a Financial Management Committee decision to limit the extent to which deficits would support, limit the extent to which undesignated legacies would support deficits. So over the years 2009 to 12, a decreasing percentage each year of undesignated legacies received were available to fund the operations of General Synod, with the balance going to the Ministry Investment Fund. There's a process in place where applications can be made to access those funds, and there's certain criteria. An annual maximum is set by the MIF fund is $250,000 funding to support ministries each year. The other balances that are within the internally designated, capital is also in there. There is an officer's contingency fund. There are two funds that we set aside funds every year for meetings of General Synod, as well as meetings of Sacred Circle. Both those events are are high investment, and there's no way that we could afford to run the events without putting aside an amount annually every year. So those are important balances in the internally designated net asset component of the balance sheet. On the statement of operations, the highlights, you'll see that revenues were $12 million in 2012. That's 1.7% lower than prior year. Higher revenues from proportional giving and resources for mission flow-through revenues were more than offset by lower revenue from the Anglican Journal. Other revenue, which is made up of recognition of deferred revenues and grant revenues, increased over the prior year. Expenses were $12.4 million, 1.5% higher than prior year. Decreases in the Anglican Journal, the Council of the North grants, and other expense lines were more than offset by increases in other program areas, many of which were supported by Ministry Investment Fund grants, which I just talked about. There was a deficiency of core revenue over expenses of $453,000. Investment income and undesignated legacies combined to add $400,000. to swing the bottom line to a surplus of $247,000 before transfers to internally designated funds. This pie chart shows what the component parts of total revenue are. You can see that key in revenues is proportional giving from dioceses. Proportional giving makes up 70% of total revenue. The Anglican Journal makes up the next slice at 14%. Resources for mission and other revenues are 8% each, which makes up the total of 100%. The next chart shows expenses by type. Program and diocesan support are the largest share at 30%. And the different program areas are itemized in the Statement of Operations. The Anglican Journal and grants to Council of the North each make up 18%. Governance expenses are 12%, resources for mission are 9%, and admin and other expenses are 13%. So the next slide shows a summary of 2012 actual operations as compared to budget. Total revenues were $593,000 under budget. Budget is not shown in the audited statement, so I've just presented it in the slide. Total revenues were $593,000 under budget. Proportional giving was largely on plan for the year, but this was only due to catch-up from prior years from certain dioceses. If that catch-up hadn't been done, we would have been under budget. Resources for mission had a shortfall of $325,000 from budget, and Anglican Journal advertising was under budget by $132,000. The other line items and presentation differences between the audited statements and budget combined to make up the remainder of the variance, which is just over $100,000. On the expense side, there's a presentation variance on the Sacred Circle expenses, as there was an event last August. That variance was $358,000. There were savings in program areas for a total of $239,000. Investment income is now presented below the line. In prior years, investment income was presented above the line, but this change now enables comparison of core revenues and expenses year over year on a consistent basis, regardless of whether there is a gain or loss on investments. In 2012, investment income was $521,000 higher than budget due to the exceptional performance of the Consolidated Trust Fund. Most of this variance in investment income is due to market gains and therefore is unrealized. Transfers to internally designated net assets were $211,000 less than budget. The presentation treatment of the transfer of assets to cover the Sacred Circle in budget created an offsetting variance, offsetting against the expenses, and then the transfers to internally designated net assets also included an unplanned transfer of $100,000 to get a head start on a provision for the 2016 meeting of General Synod, and that was because we had a surplus due to the we were able to do that due to the surplus on the investment income. So on the bottom line, the operating surplus for 2012 was $54,000. So that's after the transfers to internally designated assets, as compared to the planned surplus, which was $5,000. So that's quickly the statements of the three organizations for which we have responsibility.
I stand as the chair of the Audit Committee. That might not inspire confidence, even if I have a degree in mathematics and economics. I have difficulty adding sometimes. However, there are 3 senior chartered accountants as members of the committee, all of whom have their FCA designation, their highest designation. I stand to move the motion that the audited financial statements for 2012 for the 3 different statements, the General Synod of the Anglican Church of Canada operating statement, the Anglican Church of Canada Consolidated Trust Fund, and the Anglican Church of Canada Resolutions Corporation for the 2012 financial year be approved. And that's seconded by Rob Dixon.
Thank you very much. Motion is before you. Questions being called. All in favor, raise your left hand. Thank you. Those opposed, left hand. Thank you. Motion's carried. And there's another motion.
Thank you. I move, seconded by Rob Dixon, that the appointment of the chartered accountant firm of Ernst & Young, LP, as auditors for all 3 accounts for the 2013 financial year at the listed audit fees.
Thank you. That's moved by Colin Johnson, seconded by Rob Dixon. Questions being called. Do you have a question, sir?
Yes, I do. I find it difficult to believe that this has no financial implications, as it says on the order sheet that we've been given.
Thank you. You're
May I
right. It
respond
should
to
say
that?
yes. Thank you. People are still very alert. Good for you. It's been a long day. All in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you. And those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Now, we have one more piece which we want to accomplish tonight, and that's the presentation from the Council of the North. And if I could ask them to move quickly to the microphones, that would be great. And while they're doing that, would you like just a quick pop-up stretch and sit right back down?
I think we got time to finish everything tomorrow, actually. I think we will.
Please take your seats again. Thank you very much. And if you could direct your attention to the side podium. Thank you very much.
So we start here, and then we'll go and we'll say, after that bit, we'll go into, I'll point you when I get to it. While the bishops come up, I need to apologize to them. I sent everyone a memo telling them to wear their clerical shirts, and I wore mine. So I apologize to those of you who I mistook. We are going to abbreviate our presentation in hopes that that will express our gratitude to you as best we can for our support this evening. So if you have any questions, please feel free to come to our booth or to speak to Bishop Lydia or me today or over the next 3 years. We want to begin as we end in the name of God, O Tauimau, O Kasisimau, Minagaganatsit Achak. I'm Michael Hawkins, the chair of the Council of the North.
I am Lydia Mamakwa, Vice Chair of the Council of the North. St. Paul wrote to the Philippians, I want to know Christ and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of sharing in his sufferings. This expresses something of the spiritual flavor of the northern part of our church. Paul goes on to speak about how, forgetting what is behind and straining towards what is ahead, he presses on. This expresses something of where we are as the Council of the North. We have come up here simply to say, Miigwech, thank you, and thanks be to God for your support.
We hope that you know that we are grateful to the entire Anglican Church of Canada in its parishes, in its congregations, and in its dioceses for your support of the Council of the North, reaffirmed in so many ways, especially over the past 6 years, reaffirmed at General Synod in 2007, and especially in Vision 2019. I also hope that General Synod will begin to see over the next 3 years that your grant to the Council of the North is an investment in research and development, in experience, in experiments in mission and ministry, as we find new ways of walking together, new ways of equipping members to serve, and new ways of living out our mission. In the Council, there is a new accountability among us as Council members and to General Synod. And the two things I really want to signal tonight before we show you a brief video and then get out of your way for prayers and then for perhaps some relaxation and the football game, is the two things we really want to say is express our gratitude. Every member of the Anglican Church of Canada, through their parish, diocesan, and national apportionment, supports the ministry of our church in the North. And the main theme of what we want to say to you this evening is thank you. Also to celebrate this new accountability that we've achieved. It took us 20 years to get there. Some of it involved a new formula in dividing the grant, but we've come to a new accountability, a new mutual trust and support. And I already, over the last 3 years, our relationship with General Synod, with church house staff, and with church house departments has begun to grow in that way. The support that we received from the Primate yesterday in his presidential address was moving for me. I will remain grateful, Your Grace, to you for that for at least a year. I promise. So, but the support that the Primate, that the General Secretary, the Treasurer of the National Church, who's a member of the Council, and especially the folks in Resources for Mission and Communication and Information Resources provide us are extraordinary, and we have grown in our relationship with them. The one last thing I'll signal, and then we'll say thank you and let you watch the video we prepared, is that we also have a new relationship with our National Indigenous Bishop, with ASIP, and with Indigenous Ministries. That was signaled at the Sacred Circle by the large number of council bishops there, as well as by the significant work being done in self-determination in a variety of council, dioceses, and areas. So our message simply to you tonight is thank you, and thanks be to God for your support over the last, if my math is right, 130 years. Thank you, General Synod, for your sacrificial and generous support of our ministry together in the north of our country and our church. I'm going to try to say thank you in our card, and then you can applaud and get me out of here. Now, don't laugh. Nakamik, Miigwech, Tinigi, Masicho, Kwakstep, Guanoshish, merci. Thank you.
The Council of the North is a grouping of dioceses and archdeaconries which are supported through grants by the General Synod. The geographic area of the Council represents 85% of Canada's landmass and is home to 15% of the population. With leadership from diocesan and Indigenous bishops, the Council meets twice a year to administer General Synod's grants for Northern Mission and to share and address the challenges of providing pastoral and sacramental ministry to isolated communities. In recent years, the Council has embraced the marks of mission and has been guided by Vision 2019. Leaders across the Northern Church recognize that the General Synod's support is not about delivering services to members, but about equipping members to serve.
Across Canada and around the world, Anglicans are drawn together in the service of God's mission by what we know as the 5 marks of mission. They are to proclaim the good news of the gospel, to teach and nurture and baptize new believers, to respond to human need by loving service, to transform unjust structures of society, address violence of every kind, and pursue peace and reconciliation, and to care for the earth.
We are having to find ways in which our structures can be shaped by our mission as opposed to our mission being constrained by our structures. We have a new initiative in the Diocese of the Yukon, for example, where there's a ministry of presence, and they're using some of the grant and the support we get from the General Synod to bring people into communities, just to live there and provide some basic presence of Christian ministry in that community. The courageous ways in which both the Diocese of Kuwait and the Diocese of Moosonee have embraced a future which has some unknowns in terms of the structure of the diocese as they've known it, but continues a commitment to the ministry and mission of the Church. We're teaching in the Council of the North, in Bible studies, in vacation Bible schools, in fly-in communities, in gatherings of new believers, in schools of ministry for lay people and ordained people that go on, in the work of catechists and in the growing work of catechists in the North, which has been a part of our ministry from the beginning.
These 11 dioceses cover 85% of the landmass of Canada. They are coping with great distances. They cope with limited financial resources, and they cope with huge challenges in ministry.
The pastoral needs of the North are without doubt higher than in the rest of the country. One of the challenges that we face in the Council is we have fewer resources and greater needs than most of the rest of the country when it comes to the work and mission of the Church. That's a challenge that is before us, which we are trying to address imaginatively and courageously.
Praise you forever, singing a song of love, a song of praise. Worship together, worship here in this place.
People that are exercising ordained ministry in the North do that at a great cost. And as we know, a number of people in ordained ministry in those dioceses are in fact non-stipendiary. And the Church really needs to be attentive to their needs, given the generosity that they bring to their ministry.
Of the 16 communities that I look after in the Northern Ontario region, 12 of these communities are ministered by non-stipendiary priests, and some of them are elderly retirement age, and yet they go on serving. These clergy that serve as non-stipendary are faithful, dedicated, and devoted to their calling. And this is a fine example of what it means to respond to human need by loving service, as the third Marks of Mission says.
When I think of a deacon who has a full-time job, but after their work drives 4 hours to the hospital to visit a dying elder 4 hours away and gets back home at 3 in the morning, I think of responding to human need by loving service. When I think of people traveling large distances in the winter to go and comfort a family and a community that are grieving after a tragic suicide in a community, I see someone responding to human need by loving service.
Serve you, no greater honor for us to be your servants here. Grant us thy Holy Spirit to light.
The development of area missions is not just a cost-saving measure, but more so a move towards greater self-determination of indigenous peoples. It does answer to the fourth Marks of Mission, where it states to transform the unjust structures of society. By having the area mission, we are transforming the structures to enhance the work of the Native ministry. There is a lot of work yet to be done in areas of healing and to seek peace and reconciliation. Our people have undergone so much pain and despair, and yet they still go on with their ministry and their faith. Our desire is that we will continue to proclaim the gospel to our people, to everyone, whether it be in our native language or in other language.
We, through the Council of the North, I think, are seeing some really exciting developments in terms of self-determination and a fulfilling of the desires for self-determination on the part of Indigenous peoples. Self-determination with respect to leadership in their own communities and structures of the church that work for them, that are more in sync with Aboriginal ways of gathering, making decisions, moving forward together. There are some wonderful developments, of course, to celebrate. There's all that's happened in Northern Ontario, the movement from, an area mission to now the creation of a northern diocese. There's the shared ministry between a diocesan and an Indigenous bishop in Saskatchewan. And there are other conversations, across Canada's north in terms of new ways of being the church. One of the particular challenges that we face, of course, in the north is a faithful living out of Markham Mission number 5 with respect to care for creation, out of a sense of care and concern for those who come after us. And there are two things that really are very much at play in Canada's north. One is, of course, the melting ice cap and the impact that is beginning to have on the land, on the people, on the culture, issues of homeland security and the openness of the waters across the polar cap and so on. What's all the impact in terms of the changing culture of Canada's north? The other one, of course, is that Canada's north is very rich in natural resources, and as much as we want to be able to extract those resources, we believe as people of faith and people who are called to steward God's creation that we must go about resource extraction in ways that are entirely responsible. And the third piece, I think, there also is that there's much to learn, I think. There's much to learn from our Indigenous brothers and sisters. We need to be listening to their respect for the land, their care for the land. You know, it's in their heartbeat, the care for the land.
The financial support that we receive through the General Synod allows us to carry on the ministry and mission of the Church in the North. But the greatest good we receive from that financial support is the encouragement that it provides to the lay and ordained ministers who work so selflessly and sacrificially throughout the north of Canada.
Our Anglican Church of Canada has for many years had a deep commitment to the Church in the North. And through Vision 2019, which carries us forward for yet another 6 years, support for the Council of the North is one of the high priorities within Vision 2019. It's a marvelous story of partnership, the Anglican Church of Canada and the Council of the North, a marvelous story of partnership in the service of God's mission right here at home in Canada.
We have an opportunity in the North to model for the rest of the community what it looks like to walk together as equals. And we've been blessed, particularly in my diocese, by a commitment to what we call being together in the gospel, Mamoyesi Miwachimuin. That is the most encouraging thing that's happened there, is to see that commitment both from our Indigenous and non-Indigenous members to rediscover and to reclaim our God-given and Christ-redeemed dignity and equality as human beings, as Christians in the Church.
The Council of the North has come to a significant turning point in its life and relationship with the wider Church. Past rivalries and conflicts have been set aside. The emphasis today is on nurturing deep and abiding partnerships across the Canadian Church. In pressing on toward the future, the Council draws inspiration from St. Paul in his letter to the Philippians. I want to know Christ and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of sharing in his sufferings, forgetting what is behind and straining towards what lies ahead.
There are some announcements before we go, and the Lutherans finished right on time, and they're going slowly so that we can catch up and get to night prayers. I'll talk fast. I know I can do that. Pension Committee meeting will be at 10:30 tomorrow in the Confederation Boardroom on the 11th floor at the Lord Elgin Hotel. The Council of General Synod will meet at the same time but in a different place in room 107 of this Ottawa Convention Centre on the first floor. Remember that we're together between 8:30 and 8:50 a.m. at the Confederation Flame at Parliament Hill tomorrow morning. We're to be back for lunch at noon in Canada Hall 1. General Synod Session 5 will begin here tomorrow at 1:30, so you may leave your resolution binders on the tables overnight. There's a special lost and found announcement. This morning when we met in joint session, a delegate bag containing an Ojibwe Bible was lost. If you were seated in the vicinity of table 29 close to the doors, please check your delegate bag to make sure it wasn't picked up in error. If you do find it, please return it to Bishop Mark MacDonald or hand it in at the General Synod information desk by the doors. Harry Huskins would like to speak with Bishop Percy Coffin, Lynn McNaughton, and Marian Jenkins at the head table for a moment as you're getting ready to go downstairs, so they're absolved of hurry. And finally, if I can find it, and I can, there are extra copies of The Dream Takes Shape, the background information for tomorrow's Keewatin presentation, and they are available at the General Synod information table. Those are the announcements for tonight. Don't forget, if you're leaving early, leave your clickers behind.
Thank you very much for a good day's work, and let's move now quickly to join our brothers and sisters for night prayer.